chalice doesn't cool down at night, it just changes its mind about how it wants to burn you. Heat came up from the sidewalk like a second weather as I stood under our porch light and listened to the HOA fountain, a block away pretending to be a river. From the street, our place looked like a brochure, stacked stone, tidy hedges, the kind of garage you show off when your tools are alphabetized and your neighbors envy your epoxy floor. I made my living keeping networks running, and our house reflected that. No loose ends, no noisy failures. Inside, Madison had candles going again. She liked the smell of other people's kitchens, vanilla, cedar, fresh linen, anything that made our brand new life feel like it came with a warranty. She came out of the pantry with a smile and 2 mugs balanced in one hand like she'd rehearsed. She'd started calling our nighttime tea little socials after work. Cute, except they'd started after her new job at the HOA management company and the late emails with a man named Patrick, whose signature block bragged about his law school and a specialty in covenants and compliance. "You look like you beat the traffic," she said. "Good day?" "Uptime's the only God we answer to," I said, which made her roll her eyes and laugh, which made me forget for a second the charge that had come through earlier from an online pharmacy in her name for something I didn't recognize and the Amazon order history that suddenly had a pill splitter in it. She handed me the blue mug she always used for herself. I took it like I didn't notice, like I wasn't counting. I set it down on the counter and reached for the kettle when she turned to wipe a drip. In one motion, I moved the mugs an inch to the left, hers to where mine had been, mine to where hers had been, and poured. No drama, no speech, just a systems check. We carried our cups to the island, and I watched her watch me take a sip. Nothing. Chamomile and honey, and the kind of quiet married people go looking for in other people when they've lost it at home. We talked about nothing big, the neighbor who kept putting trash cans out too early, and how the HOA would absolutely send a letter, the light in the garage that stuttered like it was embarrassed to be fluorescent. She sipped twice and set the mug down like it had offended her and rubbed her temples. "Headache?" I asked. "These new bulbs," she said, pointing to the recessed lights we'd had since escrow closed. She stood, kissed the top of my head like a nurse, and said she needed a shower. I watched her go, and then I stood up myself, walked to the sink, and, holding my breath like an idiot, poured the rest of my tea into a zip-top bag. I sealed it, labeled it with the date, and slid it behind the frozen chicken in the garage freezer. The kitchen camera in the corner blinked its little red light. I had turned the audio on 2 nights ago, checked the retain clips box, and told myself I was protecting the house from porch pirates. People lie better when they're lying to themselves. "So we're doing this," I said to the empty kitchen. The faucet dripped twice like a metronome agreeing with me. Madison started talking about babies before we finished unpacking. She was 35 and had a voice that made strangers tell her secrets. When we would drive past playgrounds in Frisco on weekends, she'd say our kids' names out loud as if naming them would conjure them into the back seat. I wanted to be a dad, but I also wanted a minute to settle into this mortgage that wore a necktie. Then she started talking like this. "We should protect the baby. We should make sure the house isn't at risk if something happens to me. You know how these things go. My mother's cousin lost everything because of paperwork." She smiled when she said paperwork like it was something you could pick and choose to respect. She said, "Let's move the houses into my name, for now, just until the baby's born, because in Texas you can do fine things with deeds and trusts if you're bold and don't ask too many questions." She worked at an HOA firm where everyone spoke covenant like a first language. Her boss's pet attorney Patrick had already advised her informally about the cleanest way to protect assets for the child. We didn't have a confirmed pregnancy yet. We had late and I feel different and a test she said she'd thrown away because she didn't want to jinx it. When I suggested we wait until her OB confirmed anything before we called a lawyer, she laughed and said I was such an engineer, always waiting for green lights, and we kissed and then didn't talk about it because we were both good at not talking about the thing that would end us. I'm not a suspicious man by hobby. Paranoia makes you bad at my job, but paranoia's cousin is vigilance, and vigilance is holy if you use it right. I started a folder. Not in the cloud, not on any synced drive, not on my work laptop. An encrypted volume with an ugly name on an old SSD in the bottom of the toolbox, labeled Socket Set B. Inside the volume lived PDFs of pharmacy orders in her name, shipments delivered while I was on site, a receipt from an urgent care clinic in Addison for nausea, dizziness, a photo of Patrick's business card that Madison had left on the counter like a joke. The kitchen camera clips lived in their own little world in the app, time-stamped and boring. Boring until they weren't. The first time I saw him on the feed, I was at lunch in the office watching the live view because I was braced for a package. The door opened, and a man in a suit looked straight at the camera like he was flattering it. Not Tyler, not a neighbor, not a cousin. He stepped out of the frame, then came back to peer at the angle like he was curious about the brand. 2 minutes later, Madison ushered him to the kitchen island with a smile reserved for people who make your life easier for a fee. They talked over folders. It could have been nothing. It could have been a consult about trash can placements for all I knew. Except Madison had said she was meeting her friend Alexa at the HOA pool to catch up. The camera didn't lie. You learn to appreciate that after enough human conversations. That night, she suggested a nightcap tea. She was batting 1,000 for domesticity. I swapped the mugs again. She took one sip, rubbed her head, and said she needed bed. In the morning, I went very still. I stood in the shower and let hot water talk me out of calling my brother and asking him if it was insane to consider that the woman I married might be stirring something into my bedtime like a witch with a Pinterest board. Instead, I called a lawyer whose name I got from a guy at work who'd been through a divorce without a GoFundMe. Brenda answered on the third ring and told me to breathe, which is the tone some lawyers use when they don't need your drama to do their job. Start by not making a scene, she said. If you think something's going in your drink and you have a baseline, preserve a sample. Do not confront her with a Ziploc bag in your hand. Do not test anything at home. You don't want to find yourself arguing about chain of custody in court. If you want to file a police report, go speak to a detective and ask for a consult. Tell them you want something on record in case it escalates. Then, if there's a pregnancy claim, don't sign a single transfer document, don't move any real estate, and schedule a paternity test at the soonest medically appropriate time. Keep everything boring and documented. Boring wins, drama loses. Do you understand? I'm a network engineer, I said. Boring is my religion. Good, she said. Bring me your proof stack and don't be cute. I didn't tell Madison I'd called a lawyer. I didn't tell Madison I'd gone to the police. I asked to speak with the detective and told him the truth, the plain way. My wife had been pushing for late-night tea and property transfers. I had saved a sample. I had receipts I didn't like. I wanted nothing from him but a record and an adult in the room if things went sideways. He wrote it down. He said if I had reason to believe I'd been drugged, he could point me to a lab that handled private testing that would stand up if needed. He said, don't try to catch her in the act like this was television. He said, don't drink anything you didn't make. He said, if anyone ended up in a hospital, call him first. He gave me a card and a look like he'd seen men like me make 10 different choices and knew exactly which one I was going to make. The next day, Madison put her hand on her stomach in the car and said, we need to talk about the houses. It's not about trust. It's about protecting the baby. What did your lawyer friend say? I asked, because neither of us was pretending he wasn't in the role anymore. She stared at the windshield. He said it's smart, she said. He said you can always transfer it back later. You know what's smart, I said. Even, soft. Not moving property for a baby that isn't confirmed and a husband who hasn't agreed. She pouted like a woman on a magazine cover about divorce. Cole, she said, stop being controlling. That was the first time she called me controlling. It wouldn't be the last. Weeks became a slow, steady march of small alarms. A blocked call that ended as soon as I answered. An insurance hold placed by Madison on behalf of Cole for a specialist visit I'd never scheduled. A lift ride to a lawyer's office that ended 2 blocks away instead of in the garage like she told me. I built the timeline like I build a network diagram. Show me how this thing actually works, not how they say it works in the brochure. I wrote it all down in dates and times and banal as coffee notes. Future me would need the boring to stay sane. The pregnancy became a fact. The OB confirmed at 8 weeks. Madison cried in the lobby and laughed in the car and stared at the little grainy picture like she had summoned it from her will. I stared at the picture and realized I didn't know the math that made fathers. She said, we have to protect the baby, and then slid a packet of quitclaim deed forms into my lap. She said, we're a family, and then started taking her phone onto the patio for air every time it lit up late. She said, stop being paranoid, and then blocked my number mid-argument and told me to email if I had requests. I screenshot the iPhone screen that told me I was on her blocked list and saved it with the others. When I told Brenda about the confirmed pregnancy, she nodded like a forecast she had expected. Okay, she said, then we stop guessing and we test. If you refuse a property transfer and she tries to force the issue, we'll have it on paper. If the baby's yours, we'll support him or her. If the baby's not, you'll be grateful you didn't let anyone hustle you into giving away your tools to someone else's job." "And if she refuses the test?" I asked. "She won't," Brenda said, "because she wants your houses, because she wants the story where you become the villain for asking, because she needs you." I scheduled the paternity test for the earliest point the lab would take it. Madison performed outrage and then softened into manipulation and then finally agreed because refusing would tell a story she didn't want on a calendar. I went with her to the lab like a man who believes in water and pipes. I held her purse and watched a phlebotomist smile like this was Tuesday and the universe wasn't measuring us with a syringe. The lab tech used words like chain of custody and unbroken seal. He watched us sign. He wished us luck. He said nothing else because he had a face for Tuesday. Waiting is an art I learned from dead switches at 3 in the morning. It didn't help much. I woke up at odd hours. I stopped drinking anything I didn't pour for myself. I stopped eating the evening snacks that appeared with tea. I told Madison I was trying a fasting app because my cholesterol was creeping up. She called me boring and kissed my cheek and floated away. 2 weeks later, Brenda called me. She doesn't text for results. She believes in the old things. "I'm going to read the letter," she said, "and you're going to breathe." I stood in the garage next to my socket set and my label printer and felt calm, like I came from behind wind. It wasn't calm, it was an absence of surprise. "Probability of paternity," she read, "less than 1%. I didn't say anything. I couldn't answer a question that didn't exist yet. I pictured a baby and a man who wasn't me. I pictured Madison in our kitchen with 2 mugs and an idea of herself that kept slipping in her hands. "Cole," Brenda said, softer. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," I said. "Thank you for being the kind of person who reads that sentence like a map." "We're going to do a few things now," she said. "No property transfers, no statements. If she pushes, you refer her to me. If you want to, we can invite a detective to mediation as a consult, not a threat. We're going to move this quietly and fast. We will offer a civil resolution. You keep the houses and the garage. She acknowledges the child has another legal father. You don't pay support because you are not dad. If she wants to chase the actual father, that's her business. If she wants to make this messy, we have your folder." "What if the other father disappears?" I asked. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to hear how people say these things. "They always do," Brenda said. "At first." Patrick, the HOA lawyer, did what men like him do when their job descriptions crash into their hobbies. He faded. The text went from paragraphs to one-liners, then to nothing. The day after the test results, he stopped commenting on Madison's lunch photos. 2 days later, he took a week off for a family emergency. The week after, he blocked his Instagram. In the HOA office, he became a rumor that touched everything and was officially about nothing. Madison came home with the edge of someone who'd miscounted chairs at a wedding and now had to make friends with math. "Do you still love me?" she asked, 3 nights into silent dinner after silent dinner. "I love the truth," I said. "You can bring it, or you can bring your lawyer," she cried, and I cleaned up the plates and put the mugs away without touching them. Brenda set the mediation at a neutral office in Plano with a conference table that looked like it belonged in a TV show about deals. Our mediator was a brisk woman who would have been terrifying if she wasn't so good at making rooms feel like they had gravity. I brought the kitchen camera clips, the Amazon and pharmacy receipts, the insurance calls, the text threads between Madison and Patrick that I got because she'd forwarded a hotel confirmation to our joint email by mistake. I brought the police detective's card and a letter from him that said we had consulted and that there was a record. I brought the lab result. I brought a copy of the HOA fraternization policy in case anyone decided to get moral on me. I did not bring my rage. Rage is a terrible witness. It lies worse than people. Madison came with an attorney who kept offering smiles that didn't reach his eyes. She looked smaller somehow, like shame had made her edges rounder. The mediator laid it out fast. This was not a trial. This was not a church. This was not a place to become a better person. This was a place to divide a life without setting the building on fire. "We have a proposed resolution," Brenda said. "We are not seeking to embarrass anyone. We are not seeking damages for alleged poisoning attempts at this time. We are proposing that my client retain full ownership of both properties and their contents, that Ms. Ramirez waive any claim to support from Mr. Ramirez on behalf of the unborn child, that both parties agree to a non-disparagement clause, and that we each go home in one piece." "What about the baby?" Madison asked, her voice breaking on the last word because reality had finally said its name in a room where it echoed. "The baby has a father," Brenda said, neutral. "He has a name and a bar number." Madison's attorney asked for an hour and took Madison outside to weep in air-conditioned privacy. When they came back, his voice had lost the performative calm it started with. "We'll accept the property and support terms," he said. "We'll accept non-disparagement. We'd like Mr. Ramirez to agree to pay for prenatal care given that." "No," I said, quiet. "I'll donate to a clinic in honor of all the men who signed for things they didn't break. I am not your plan B." The mediator wrote and read. We initialed things. The detective's card sat on the table like a paperweight. No one touched it. Patrick's name never passed anyone's lips. He didn't sit in the chair that waited for him like a ghost. We left with a draft agreement and a date for signatures. In the parking lot, Madison caught my elbow the way you catch a door that's closing too fast. "I'm sorry," she said, and of all the words she could have chosen, she chose the only ones that didn't make me want to punch a sky. "I thought I was saving myself. I made our house into a plan. I don't know who I am without a plan." "You'll find out," I said. "Maybe not with a lawyer holding your hand." She flinched. She had flinched at less. She let go of my arm like it was hot and walked to her car without looking back, because sometimes dignity is just a thing you pretend to have until you get home and stop shaking. I went to the garage when I got home and sat on a stool and looked at the tools that had been mine long before her. I took the old SSD out of the toolbox and slid it into an enclosure and plugged it into my laptop and washed the folder open like a quiet mouth. I made 3 copies and put them in different places. I closed the lid with a careful hand. Then I took the mugs out of the cabinet and put them in a bag and drove to Goodwill and put them in a bin, not as a ceremony, just as a task that made the kitchen mine again. The divorce decree came 3 months later like a little wind. We did not post about it. We did not host a party. Our neighbors noticed that my truck stayed and her car left. Mrs. Valdez across the street brought me tamales and said nothing except, "Eat, me Joe," which is the only sentence I needed in a week that had too many of them. Sometimes I think about the night with the cups and what would have happened if I had been the kind of man who confronts right then. I would have smashed my life into a shape that fit my anger, and then I would have had to live inside it. Instead, I saved a sample, talked to a lawyer, consulted a detective, did a test, and kept my head cool enough that when my heart froze, it didn't crack. I drive past the HOA pool some evenings and watch dads who did get their wish teach kids to hold their heads above water and kick. I don't feel punished. I feel like someone who avoided a very specific version of a hell that looks like a cul-de-sac. We like to pretend that love is a force that can burn through paperwork and lies and attachments set by people who never planned on being honest. In my experience, love is more like a wire. It carries what you carry back and forth. If you push poison through it, you get sick. If you push truth through it, it hums. I built a network at home that could not be corrupted by someone else's shortcuts. It was boring. It won. What do you think? If your partner pushed you to move houses for the baby before a pregnancy was real, would you look the other way or call a lawyer? Would you have switched the cups or walked away without proof? Tell me in the comments, and if stories like this keep you listening, hit like and subscribe. It matters more than you think.